All right. Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word, verse by verse. Grab your Bibles and follow along as we continue in our verse by verse, chapter by chapter, and book by book study through the entire Bible. We are now in Luke chapter 23. We are as Luke is telling it, we are now kind of advancing. What's interesting, remember all along I said that Luke is a Gentile, so he's telling the story from a Gentile perspective. And so because of that, he's going to spend more time. He's going to spend more time on Pilate's hearing. And as we closed out chapter 22 yesterday, he only spends really he doesn't really spend that much time. There were two hearings that Jesus went through. Caiaphas, the high priest, and Annas. Okay, I believe Annas was the actual high priest, and then I gotta look it up. Annas, I'm trying to think. Annas or Caiaphas? I think Annas was the actual high priest. In fact, I'll look it up right now. I don't want to give out wrong information, guys. But Annas, there were two actual, in a sense, hearing. Okay, there were two hearings, and because of that, let's see. Let me see which one it is. Okay, so I'm looking at Matthew here. He was led away to Caiaphas first, the high priest. And then after Caiaphas, he was taken to Annas. Okay, Annas. Both big shots. Okay, so the high priest, and these were kangaroo courts. And by the way, it was when Peter denied the Lord. It was actually Jesus was taken he was taken from Caiaphas, right? Let's see, he was taken from Caiaphas to Annas, but as he was in between, that's when Peter denied the Lord. And Jesus was sitting in the courtyard, actually listening to Peter deny him. I don't know if Peter noticed Jesus was there. I don't know how he would not know, but when he denied him the third time, Jesus turned and looked at Peter, right? So that's kind of a haunting thing we're told by history, that Peter was always haunted by that. He was always bothered by the fact that he was always bothered that he did that, because the Lord looked at him. And again, let me say this about I'm changing my heading, you all. I forgot to do that. That's why I'm looking here. Jesus had told him to remember he was going to deny him. Then he told him twice to pray that he don't enter into temptation, and that's a good lesson for us, because had he prayed, God would have strengthened him. Okay. So anyway, Luke doesn't spend really kind of hardly any time. Um, let me see, a Pilate. All right, he doesn't spend any time. Um, he doesn't spend any time before Pilate. All right, so let's get into it. Chapter 1. All right. Now, again, Luke is going to give us some insights, as he has been giving us some great insights. One, as a physician, but two, he's given us more detail. As I said, Luke's gospel is what closest that we could probably say is a investigative journalist. Okay, that he is an investigative journalist. So, all right. Let's go to verse 1 here. All right. So they wait until the morning, and we'll see why they're going to stand outside of Pilate's kind of courtyard. They don't want to go in because to them they would be contaminated. So verse 1 says, then the whole assembly rose up and brought him before Pilate. Now again, Peter didn't really even get into the Jewish side of it. How that Annas and them fabricated this charge. Judas could not, not Judas, the Sanhedrin could not execute anyone. Okay, they could not execute anyone. And this is why they have to bring him to Pilate. If they could have, we wouldn't even have this chapter going on. Jesus would already be dead, or at least they would have attempted to. Okay, but they were prohibited, so they had to fabricate a law, and Rome didn't care. Rome's position, as long as y'all quiet, you're paying your taxes. In this sense, Rome didn't care oftentimes what they did. They when I say this, as long as you understand, Rome's position is, as long as you understand, we rule over you. Okay, so they, like I say, the Sanhedrin and Herod, we're going to see him in a moment, they was installed by Rome to kind of keep things quiet. That was Rome's purpose. But they couldn't execute. So now they fabricated this law, this fake law. Pilate even going to recognize that they fabricated the law. But yet, for political reasons, he's going to go ahead and issue the execution order on Jesus. He is going to try to get out of it. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I know, but the point is that because the law, what they're trying to get Jesus the death penalty over, doesn't make sense. And Pilate is like, why is this guy standing here? I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the only reason Jesus, they tried to say that because he said he's the Son of God. That wasn't even the death penalty under the Mosaic law. That wasn't even the death penalty. So what, he said he's the Son of God, but let alone God Himself testified that they could bring witness and literally say, yeah, God spoke from heaven and said this was the Son of God. Prophecy said he was the Son of God. He is the only one who could have fulfilled the prophecy in that way. He demonstrated he was the Son of God. Now that's the Jewish side of it. And again, Luke doesn't get all into that. Alright, so he says, then the whole assembly rose up and brought him before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, we found this man subverting our nation, a lie, opposing payment of taxes to Caesar, another lie, and saying that he himself is Messiah the King. Now this gets Pilate's attention. So So Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Now, the only reason why Pilate kind of got his attention is because Israel don't have a king. They are a conquered nation. And any talk of king can equal to insurrection, and Rome wasn't going to have that. It wasn't that long ago in their history that they had the famous slave uprising. Spartacus, if you ever see any of the TV series or movies, Spartacus, who led the slave rebellion. So they wasn't going to have any of that. So that's what got Pilate's attention, but as you can see, he will soon even see that this is crazy. Verse 3. So Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Now, you'll notice these are the religious people who just made... What is interesting about this, and what's going to make this case even more, these are verifiable charges here that could be refuted. All Jesus would have had to say is they can't prove what they're saying. They're just lying, right? That's all it is. They had to lie, and it's one of the most kind of amazing things right here. Now, Jesus will not give a defense, which even Pilate's going to be amazed at this. Pilate's kind of attitude like, dude, I could try this case for you. Just all you have to do is just open your mouth, right? There were witnesses to every single lie they just made. Every single one. It's amazing they're even making it. Because again, they don't know God's plan, obviously. It's amazing they have the audacity to make these charges, which are blatantly not true. Verse 3 again, so Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered, "You have said it." Kind of a slick way of saying, yeah, but he said, "You've said it." Verse 4, Pilate then told the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no grounds for charging this man." Not even, look, he's like, not only do we don't even have a reason to have a trial here. There is no reason to even charge the man. Verse 5. But they kept insisting. He stirs up the people, teaching throughout Judea and Galilee, where he started even to hear. When Pilate heard this, he asked if he were a Galilean. Finding that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem during those days, probably for the Passover. Herod was very glad to see Jesus, and for a long time he had wanted to see him because he had heard about him, and he had hoped to see some miracle performed by him. And so they kept asking him questions, but Jesus did not answer him. And the chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers treated him with contempt, mocked him, dressed him in a brilliant robe, and sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Previously, they had been hostile to one another. So Pilate seems to be trying to just in any kind of way pass the buck here. We know from history that Pilate's hesitation here was more political. That he is treading lightly here from a political standpoint from Rome. He's got trouble with Rome. That's why he doesn't want to deal with this. He can't afford to have even the mess. That's why. So he sends them over to Herod, hoping Herod, okay, Herod, he's from your jurisdiction. He's a Galilean. Now you remember Herod was the word tetrarch here. Herod had received a fourth part of his father's kingdom that was divided to him by Rome. Okay, that's why the word tetrarch means a fourth part. And then this Herod, he ruled around Galilee, and his brother ruled in another part. Now, it's interesting, they became friends. They became friends. All right, verse 13. Pilate called together the chief priests and leaders in the people of the people and said to them, "You have brought this man as one who subverts the people, but in fact, after examining him in your presence, I found no ground to charge this man with the things you accuse him of. Now it has Herod, because he sent him back to us clearly, and he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will whip and then release him. For according to the festival, he had to release someone to them." And they cried out together, "Take this man away and release Barabbas to us, for he had been thrown into prison for rebellion, and that had taken place in the city, and for murder." Now, again, what is interesting, how these things are unfolding. Pilate really didn't even have cause to whip Jesus. And when we're talking about the flogging or whipping, the flogging, under Jewish law, you would flog a person. The most you could give them is 39 lashes. 40 lashes. The Jews would usually give them 39 just to make sure that they didn't violate the law. Now, the Roman flogging had no such restrictions. And in fact, they would use what was called a cat o' nine tail. It was a whip that had 3 straps to it. And in the straps had bits of metal and bones in it. So when it would hit your back, it would lacerate your back. A lot of people could even die from the flogging itself. And you have to also remember that one stripe equal 3 lashes. And there was no limitation. They could beat you as much as they want. Pilate seems to be hoping that this would quench their thirst for blood, and he's going to be sad that it didn't. Verse 20. Pilate wanted to release Jesus, addressed him again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." Now, Barabbas was a zealot who, and this is the very reason why they were a thorn in in Rome's side. Zealots, and we have them today. I'm going to say we can call them militant. Little factions, groups of people. Biggest problems with zealots is they always want to overthrow the government, but they don't have the means. So at best, zealots are thorns in their side, to sit, irritants. Proverbial bringing guns to knife fights, or bringing little guns to those who have bigger guns. Like today, like I say, you listen to militant people today who talk about overthrowing the government. You don't have the means to, and it's kind of a silly argument, but they talk it. Barabbas was thrown in jail, and he was going to probably be crucified because he committed murder in the insurrection. But it's lucky day, right? He probably was shocked at anything else. Like Barabbas, you're going to get released. And he's like, really? And remember, their justice system didn't work like on ours. You didn't have a lot of appeal cases and all that. Under Roman law, citizens had a lot of rights. If you wasn't a Roman citizen, you didn't have rights. The Jews necessarily wasn't citizens. There were some Jewish who were Roman citizens. For example, Paul was a Roman citizen. In fact, if you want to just on a trivial note, one of the reasons why you see Paul, the difference between Saul of Tarsus and Paul, well, Saul was Paul's Jewish name, and Paul was his Greek name. They actually sometimes have dual names to kind of fit in, one into Roman society, other in Jewish society. So verse 22, he said, the third time he said to them, "Why? What has this man done wrong? I have found no grounds for a death penalty. Therefore I will have him whipped and release him." But they kept pressuring him, demanding with loud voices that he would be crucified. And their voices went out. So Pilate decided to grant their demand and release the one they were asking for, who had been thrown into prison for rebellion and murder. But he handed Jesus over to their will. So Pilate even now is kind of like, why are we here? Why are these people are so insistent? If you will remember, in the garden, Jesus said, "This is the hour of darkness." In other words, this period of time, God, in a sense, have kind of held back the restraints. And now you see this darkness over the souls of people that they can't process, can't even think straight. Verse 26, as they led him away, they seized Simon, a Cyrenian who was coming from the country, and laid the cross on him to carry behind Jesus. Now what would happen is that they would, in the crucifixion, they would, the stake usually was at the crucifixion site, and they would, so now when he says along the way, so you would have a street and people were usually lined along the sides. The point of the crucifixion by Rome. Now I'm go back to let me see. I thought Saul became Paul like Abram because Abraham. I don't know why. I think I will say that later. No, brother. The Paul had both dual citizenship. One was Rome, and then and the other was Jewish. Saul was his Jewish name, and Paul was his Gentile name, or not Gentile, but Greek name. And also, this is why he also had the kind of custom they had, that when Paul had a task, even though he was probably working around the temple and stuff, but he also was a tent maker. All right, but if you go back to, I mentioned the uprising of the slave uprising. When Rome finally crushed the slave uprising, they literally, I think it was something like 7,000 slaves they crucified, and they had them all lined along the road, and they wanted that was purposeful, because they wanted people to see what would happen if you rebelled against Rome. And then you also would have, like in Jesus' case here, as a criminal. So now they're treating him as a criminal. Remember, Jesus even said that you come out with weapons against me to arrest me. When I sat daily, no one arrested me then. The purpose of the crucifixion was to humiliate the criminal, not only to punish the criminal, but to humiliate them as an example for others, to say, do not cross Rome, do not violate the laws. What Luke is not going into detail, of course, was that Jesus was flogged, and when he was flogged, even when he was brought back before Pilate, again, back lacerated, he was bloodied, bruised, and they still kept crying out, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. Right? They kept crying out, and Pilate is just bewildered beyond belief. So, being weak just from that experience, being abused and beat by the soldiers, being flogged, Jesus probably could not carry the crossbeam. Like I say, the stake itself was probably at the crucifixion site, but they would make the prisoners carry the crossbeam. But if they were unable to carry the crossbeam, then they had also another law that they could just say, hey, carry it. That's what they just made him. He didn't have a choice. And other applications of this law, they could say, carry my bags, right? Carry my load or whatever. But in this case, they made him, Simon the Cyrenian, they made him carry the crossbeam. Verse 27. A large crowd of people followed him, including women who were mourning and lamenting him. But turning to them, he said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and your children. Look, the days are coming when they would say, and the women without children, the wombs that never bore, the breasts that never nursed, are fortunate. Then they would say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. But if they do these things when the wood is green, what would happen when it is dry? Again, this is sort of a prophetic word. Jesus had already had predicted the fall of Jerusalem. Notice he referred to them, daughters of Jerusalem. Not just to the crowd, but daughters of Jerusalem. And then he says, of course, don't weep for me. And some of these people were his mother, Mary Magdalene, and other women. Let's see where I'm at here. 31. Okay, 32. Now it says 2 other criminals who also were led away to be executed with him. When they arrived at the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, the one on his right hand and the one on his left. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, because they do not know what they are doing. And they divided his clothes and cast lots. Now, a couple of things to unpack here. Notice the criminals. We'll get back to them later, but it's 2 criminals with him because, again, Jesus is now being treated as a criminal. You can even say, by law now, he's been convicted. He is now a criminal. So you see these other 2 criminals, and we're going to get to them in a moment, because one actually will have a conversion. And then the fact that they're casting these lots is the fulfillment of prophecy. And the only reason I kind of want to highlight that is because if you think about, there are some people who try to say that the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled were self-fulfilling prophecies. Like, for example, Jesus could have read, and said, hey, I'm going to hop on a mule and ride into Jerusalem. Okay, but you can't predict, there was no way that he could predict and fulfill how other people would respond, especially Roman soldiers, how they cast this lot. Okay, now Matthew goes into more detail, as I said, we see here that Luke is not that concerned about the Jewish part of it. Okay, he's reporting this again. He's a Gentile looking at this, so he's not that so much the fact that the Psalms predicted this. But they divided his clothes, and then when they came to one of the more expensive, he had an expensive tunic, and so they didn't tear those. They said, let's cast lots or gamble. Maybe the closest thing is shoot dice. Well, actually, I'm talking not shoot dice. The casting lots were little sticks, so they would, you had a bundle of sticks, and then one was shorter, something like that. Verse 35, and the people stood watching, and even the leaders kept scoffing. He saves others. Let him save himself if God the Messiah, the chosen one. Now, this is a very interesting statement here because, again, this is his enemies making this prophetic statement. And I'm going to tell you, the Jews would have had to have known, because they were scholars. They were very studious with the word. In some cases, they could recite entire passage, if not the whole Old Testament. A lot of times, they would devote that much time to it. They certainly knew the prophecies of the Messiah. And what is interesting is that, I had to kind of imagine that as they're saying this, that they've probably got, wait a minute now, that's a prophecy that I'm fulfilling. But, of course, it's an indictment against myself. And in the Psalms, it says that. I think it's Psalm 22, I want to say. Or the Psalm 2, I don't know which one. But, again, this very Psalm predicts this is what they're going to say. almost verbatim, right? They're going to say this: if he is the Son of God, let him have him. Let him come down, right? Notice the prayer Jesus prayed. Let me go back to verse 34. He says, Father, forgive them because they do not know what they are doing. What is interesting about this prayer here is that it is very possible that Saul of Tarsus, who later would become Paul, is here witnessing Jesus' crucifixion. Very possible. Now, the reason why I said that is because if he is there, he hears Jesus pray this prayer along with everybody else. But then we fast forward to Acts chapter 8 when Stephen prays the same prayer. I'm sorry, Acts chapter 7. He prays the same prayer. And he says, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. We also see Paul praying this prayer many years later in 2 Timothy, that he says, everyone forsook them. I pray it be not laid to their charge. That's a powerful prayer. That's a powerful prayer. That it's a humbling prayer to the one who's praying it, but it's a powerful prayer. The reason why I say it's humbling because sometimes we don't want to pray it. Sometimes we want God to get them. We want to see our enemies sometimes hurt and suffer. So it's interesting that with the Pharisees, how callous, how sinful, right? The natural feeling would be, Lord, smite them. Right? Lord, smite them. Smite them, Lord. Wipe them out. You know? That's what James and John, remember, prayed. That he was going to go to Jerusalem, and then all of a sudden now they said, we don't want you, Jesus. And they turned to Jesus and said, Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven? Because we will. You want us to call fire down from heaven on them? And Jesus says, you don't know what spirit you're in. I didn't come to destroy man's life. I came to save. And so we see here, even in keeping with this, even when, it would be just, right? In other words, he wouldn't even have been wrong to pray vengeance. He wouldn't even been wrong because they did wrong. We just kind of list the lies, right? The lies that they told to frame him. Now, of course, he could have put up defense easily. This was probably one of the most easiest defense you could ever put. It's because it was all lies. But he didn't. And then, of course, when they come and they're sitting here gloating, right? Where am I at here? Verse 35 again, he says, the people stood by watching, and the leaders kept scoffing. He saved others, let him save himself, if this is God the Messiah, the chosen one. Verse 36, the soldiers also mocked him. They came offering, I'll come back to this, but he says, they mocked, this gloat, as he's hanging on the cross. As he's hanging on the cross, they're mocking. In that, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's a powerful prayer. And it is something that should be a part of our, our godly resolve. Praying for our enemies. Jesus said to pray for our enemies. Pray for those that despise you, misuse you. Pray for them. He says, pray for our enemies. And we see Jesus here modeling this very thing as he's sitting on the cross. As it seems that he's defeated. Right? His enemies is looking with a satisfying gloat. He says, Father, forgive them. Wow. All right, we'll come back to this in the next study. We'll pick it up right here. But this is a powerful prayer. Now, let me just say, this is not a formula. I'll say that this is not a formula. In other words, this doesn't mean because you pray this that your enemies will look at you and say, oh, gee, I'm touched by the heart. No, they wasn't. Remember, the Pharisees didn't go, oh, gee, guys, gosh darn, we did a terrible thing. Let's run to Pilate and have him taken down from the cross. No, they still gloated. They still gloated. Now, you have to kind of stop and think for a minute. Where are they now? But anyway. All right, guys. I'll come back to this in the next study. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you in the next study. All right.